What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. So in this episode, we are going to go over the basics on how to build a 12-bolt rear end. This bad boy is going to go in the Chevelle. It's got C-clip eliminators. It's got an eat and posi unit. And we kind of go through the basics on how to set up a rear end. This is definitely a first time for me, so I had my buddy Zach come over and give me all the pointers and point me in the right direction so we can get this thing built to handle the ponies of the Chevelle, because right now currently there's just a 10 bolt in there and I've been scared to try to launch it because I don't want to spit an axle out the side. So let's get into building this 12 bolt. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Hit up FTP Speed Shop, pick up some merch, help support the channel. Let's get into this thing. Ready? All right, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to Turner Design Works. Brandon over there got this thing powder coated in a hurry. And our first order of business is to get these old axle bearing races pulled out. So let's get those yanked out.
I really didn't expect it to come out that easy.
So what we're doing here is we are setting up a setup bearing for the pinion. The bearing that will go on in the end is a pressed bearing. However, that's very difficult to remove without damaging the bearing, and we're gonna have to put this bearing on multiple times, torque everything down, measure the pinion preload, and shim that as needed. So we're honing this thing out with a drill and a socket that fits close to the right size with some sandpaper and tape wrapped around it. And we're basically just machining the inner surface of that bearing out so that it just barely fits over the pinion. Nice tight fit, but it's easily removed so that we can take this thing on and off multiple times in order to get the proper pinion shims. Ooh, we're getting close, doggy. All right, next order of business, we're gonna go ahead and chase all the threads out for the diff cover. We're gonna be using a 5/16 18 tap, and we're gonna have the clutch on the drill turned down super low, just so we make sure that if it doesn't go in straight or if it bottoms out, it doesn't snap the tap off or we don't damage any of the threads. Made a simple rear end stand out of two 16-inch long, 1-inch angle irons that I'm just gonna bolt up to an old engine stand.
I want you to go get that gear, and you're going to slide it down, and I'm going to thread that in. You're going to kind of go until you feel the
Threads line up?
Yep.
We put the ring gear in the oven for about 20 minutes at 400 degrees. Let it get nice and hot and expand. It easily slips over the eat and posi unit. We're going to put a couple bolts in to hold it in place while it cools down a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and Loctite all the other bolts. Get them put in. We're going to remove the bolts we put in first to hold it in place, Loctite those, and then we're going to torque all the bolts down.
Well, you need to pull it up tight. Yeah.
It's fucking hot.
Okay, flip it over.
Can we start it?
Yep. Good enough. We just want to snug it so that it doesn't become.
Fully seat a bit, huh? Now, would you mark those are the ones that have not been Loctited?
Yep, I marked those because those are the ones that have not been Loctited.
Makes good sense, because I can see how you can get confused real easy. And now you obviously have cleaned the threads. You ran those through brake clean.
I did. And I cleaned the ring gear, cleaned all the stuff out of the threads too, because if you put Loctite on oily threads, it doesn't work.
It's one thing that I often skip is like, oh, you got Loctite on it. It's good, but if it's got grease on it, it's got gumpus in it, goopus, as Gene would say.
Yeah, then that's no good.
They don't do nothing.
Another interesting thing here, I believe, on stock, How tight will this thing get stuff?
I have no idea. I've never tested. GM 12 bolt car, pinion preload, ring gear torque 55.
Oh, 55.
Would you like me to get the torque wrench out?
Yep.
You have to suck it in. Think skinny thoughts. I don't even know the best way to grab this thing. Torquing down the ring gear, we like to sneak up on it as always, so we started out with 40 foot-pounds on the torque wrench. The 3/8 impact pretty much got us to about 40 foot-pounds. So we moved the torque wrench up to 55 foot-pounds for the final torque, and we just worked our way around in a circle because everything was pretty well sucked up where it needed to be, and we had that bad boy torqued down in no time. That's going to be a lot more foot-pounds.
Yeah, 15 more.
Oh no, that was a lot. Already at 50.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, okay, they're turning. I don't like that I'm bouncing it though. Hold on, let me get a good better grip. There we go.
I think that's working better. We're just going to go around because they're all pretty snug. Spin it as we do that so that they're all about like that.
I can check a couple more. Alright. I'd rather
Make sure, yeah, I hear
I'd
you.
rather be over torqued than under torqued. Damn! Woo! Pulled a shoulder and a bicep on that one. Wow! There are a couple different ways to install the carrier bearings on the differential carrier unit. One would be to heat them up. We had the bearings in the oven at 400 degrees with the ring gear.
We're not doing it.
Yeah, that did not work so well, so we went ahead and just pressed them on. All right, so what are we doing here?
We're lubing this bearing just a little bit so that it will go on.
Little friction inhibitor.
Yeah, you don't always have to do this, but it can't hurt anything. And this is just an old race, you know, the same bearing pretty much, but we cut the cage and all the bearings fell out of it, but it works perfectly for a pressing tool like this.
I'm assuming you want to try to make sure that bearing's going on.
Yep, exactly.
There it goes. And then you want that bottomed out against the...
Yep, all the way down. Now I'm just going to kind of recenter this a little bit.
Well, that'll work to them better than heating it up in the oven and trying to slide it on.
Yes, it did.
But we always got to try the easy way first, right?
Another thing that a lot of people wonder, you know, obviously this bearing needs to go down past the top of that, but there is a little bit of a bevel in this.
The chamfer so it
So-
doesn't get stuck on there.
This is the best thing I've ever found for doing this so that you can actually get it down all the way where it needs to be.
Yep, and then not have to worry about something getting stuck on it.
Correct.
All right, guys, so per the Moser C-clip eliminators, we need to, let me try this again. We need to go ahead and cut this guy off and leave roughly 1/8 of an inch there. I've already went and done this side, and that's what I'm left with. So we're gonna go ahead and get this side cut. For cutting the axle housing for the C-clip eliminator kit, I used my Portaband, but you can use a grinder or a hacksaw. I've even heard of people using a Sawzall with a metal cutting blade in it, so you can use just about any metal cutting device. Just make sure that you do a nice clean straight cut. And as with everything in the automotive industry, cleanliness is one of the most important things. So we went ahead and cleaned this rear end housing out, especially since we had it sandblasted before powder coat. We wanted to make sure we got all of the sandblast media out and any other metal shavings and burnt oil and whatever else was in the rear end housing originally. So like I said, we went over this thing 3 times with brake clean, blowing it out. We used a broom handle with a rag in it and pushed it through like we were cleaning the barrel of a gun to get the axle tubes, and just kept going over it until the thing came out clean.
I guess somebody must have put dots on here. The left one has 2 dots here and the right side only has 1.
Okay, cool. So we don't have to mark them.
Okay. This one goes on the inside, this one goes on the outside.
What size races do we need, or hammer slammers? We got all of them. First try.
I'm going to use this one to start, and I'm going to finish with that one.
Driving home with that, you want me to get the air hammer out?
No.
Because it has a thing in there I've never used before. I'm just saying we could use that.
No. Yeah, I'm kind of impressed with Icon stuff, to be honest.
It's seems pretty well built. I've hammered the shit out of that thing, and it seems to be...
I have one of these that's probably, you know, going on 20 years old that I got from the Mac dealer, and it's like a mushroomed over, you know, thing now because it's aluminum, and this looks like it's steel, so that'll hold up better. Where's the hammer?
Let me get that for you. Pick your choice of construction hammers. I prefer the big red claw hammer, personally, framing.
Jesus Christ, we're using this on the fucking 12 bolt now.
That's my hammer of choice. Gonna put a little lube on there to help facilitate the slide.
It can't hurt.
Facilitate the slide. Shine a little light on that.
I might want you to hold the other side of this thing. I don't know.
We're going to start out by using a slightly larger race drive tool. That's just going to give you a little bit more leeway, making sure you don't have to have the driver perfectly centered on the bearing. We're going to get it drove most of the way in, and then we'll swap over to one that fits the race perfectly, and we'll drive it home the rest of the way. You can tell that you have the race fully set when it changes a completely different sound when you're hitting on it. Go ahead and give it a couple more hits just to make sure it's in. You'll definitely be able to tell that the sound is different, and then you know your race is set fully. That was the sound of fully seated.
It was?
Yeah, it changed sounds. So you know it's down all the way.
It's down all the way.
And just repeat the process on the outer pinion bearing race. Basically the same process, just going to use smaller drives to get that bad boy driven home.
Okay, so we have the housing all cleaned up. We have the new races pushed in there. This is a setup bearing that we made. You know, this is just another pinion bearing, but we opened up the inside diameter of this so that it slips on and off of here really nicely, because this is normally an interference fit. I do not have any washers in here yet, or shims, because what we're going to do, put this together with no crush sleeve in here. and I have to tap that bearing from the other side. But we're pretty much going to mock this gear up in here, and then we're going to put a fixture in here to measure the pinion depth. And this pinion depth, if you look at the gear, high quality gear sets usually have the desired pinion depth engraved on them. This would be 1.083 inches. So that's what we're going to shoot for with the tool that we have.
Because they set those up where they run them from the factory and see where they mesh right?
They lap the gears.
Lap the gear, that's
at,
where they're...
yeah, at that depth. And you want to make sure that this gear intersects with the ring gear, you know, the same way that it did at the factory when they lapped the gears.
So we just recreate that with shims, washers, whatever.
Correct. So we're going to measure that, and we're probably going to come up with a deeper number than that. You know, it might be like 1.1 inches instead of 1.083 inches. And then whatever we get, we're going to subtract 1.083 from that measurement. Whatever that number is, we're going to add that amount of shims, measure it again, and then once we get that measurement established, then we're going to assemble that with the crush sleeve and torque it down until we compress the crush sleeve, get the right pinion bearing preload, and then that part of it is done. Just tap the bearing with that punch, you know, on either side until that bearing is down. Yep.
So we'll set the GoPro right here.
How hard can I hit it? You can hit it pretty hard.
Does it matter if I go like 4 points or just every other side?
Just as long as it's not getting bound up.
First time you install a brand new pinion front bearing, you may need to tap on it with a punch and a hammer to get it to go on because it is a pretty tight fit. But once you've pulled it apart a few times, that fit will loosen up just a little bit and then you'll be able to push it in by hand. So the first time we installed this, we tapped it in, and after that we were able to push it in by hand and then press it in the rest of the way with the companion bearing.
Good enough for now. So this is the front pinion bearing, and that's kind of a press fit a little bit, but you can push it on there.
It's a snug fit.
It's a snug fit. The thing is, the companion flange that goes on here is going to put pressure on that along with the crush sleeve that's in there. But right now I don't put the crush sleeve in. I'm just going to mock this up just like this, put just a tiny little bit of preload on that pinion nut, and then we're going to put the pinion setup tool in here and see where we're at as far as pinion depth goes. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just put a little pressure on this nut, pull the companion flange down against those bearings, put just a little bit of preload on it so that we're not slopping back and forth like we are now, and then we can set this up and measure it. Alright, so this is the fixture for checking the accuracy of this pinion depth gauge, and really what it's doing, we want to set this up at 0 right here, and this is a 2-inch travel dial indicator, so it's a little bit deceiving if you're not used to seeing one of these. You see down here it's on 1 inch right there, so we're set up at 1 inch pretty much, you know, and you just want to make sure that that's right on 0. I guess you'd call this a standard. This is for checking the accuracy of the gauge, but this is the pinion depth tool that we sell at Speedway Motors. It's really meant for 9-inch Ford third members, but it can be used on a lot of different rear end applications. And this is kind of the first step. When you take this all out of the box and you put this dial indicator in here and set the set screw down, you want to make sure that this goes right back and forth and you're right on 0. It's going to give you the most accurate measurement that you can. So this is the dog bone that we described earlier, and what we want to do is measure this surface of the pinion gear, but obviously it's below the center line, so we need this piece to come up here, you know, about like that, and give us a place to measure from. So I think that's pretty good. So the next step is to put this tool in here, and you got to get kind of tricky to snake it in here like this.
That thing's all spring loaded?
Well, it will be as soon as I put these little collars on here. And the whole idea here is that you're centered in the races that hold the carrier bearings. So you kind of want to move this around. This one doesn't feel like it's in there all the way. While being careful not to damage the tip of your dial indicator. So these are centered. And I'm not going to go into extreme depth with this gauge. I wrote an article a few years ago, and it's on the Toolbox on Speedway Motors website, and we'll link that so that if anybody wants to know more about how to use one of these pinion depth gauges, they can do that. But the target measurement that we have that the gear manufacturer put on here is 1.083 inches. And if you look at this gauge, it's kind of difficult, and this is the part that I don't want to go into too much because I could talk about this for half an hour. But 1.083 would be right there. And you have to remember the gauge is going backwards. So don't pay attention to the letters that are in black. We got to look at the letters in red, which are kind of hard to see. But what we have determined here is that we need about 29 thousandths worth of shims underneath the bearing on the pinion gear to move this measurement up here to 1.083 inches. So we're gonna pull this all apart, and we're gonna put 29 thousandths of shims underneath that bearing, and we're gonna put it all back together and check it again and see where we're at.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How close do you have to be to that?
The closer the better.
Because I'm assuming we got a certain number of shims and we're gonna fall within, is there a window that we should try to shoot for?
A couple thousandths is what I try to shoot for, and I'm by no means the best rear end, builder in the world or anything like that. However, we want to get as close as we can get, and this is not something that everybody has to do. You don't have to do this. You can put it together and run a pattern on the gears, and you can look at the pattern and you can adjust the pinion depth based on that. But if you have the tool, which we can supply that, speedwaymotors.com, we sell this tool. It's really meant for 9-inch Ford housings, but it works great on 10-bolt Chevys, 12-bolt Chevys, GM 55Ps like the dropout third members that are in 55 through 64 rear ends. It's a great tool, and it saves tons of time actually. If you're going to do more than one rear end, I really recommend having a tool like this because it saves all the time. You get your measurements right on. And it's just the way to go for me.
Okay, well, let's go to the next step, get this blown apart, and start measuring some shims.
All right, then let's do it. Yeah. Right, go ahead now.
So it can be a pretty tight fit, especially when you got all brand new parts, so you might have to get a little persuasion out.
So this is the pinion shims that come in the rebuild kit. I just happen to have a bunch of extra ones laying around, so I'm not going to open that right away. So we're shooting for 29 thousandths, and you're going to have to stack these shims to get your target number. So that one is about 10.5 thou. There's another one that's similar, so if you think about that, that's 21. There's one that's about 11.5. So you can literally just stack these together. So we're going for 29. There's 31.5. That's a little bit more than we want, so let's see what these other ones are. That's 14. There's another one that's 14, so
It's 28 there.
yeah, something like that. And you can clean these up a little bit because there could be oil, you know, different things like that on here that add to the thickness.
About 29.
I say we throw these in there and see where we're at.
That's freaking right on the money. Let's do that.
So I know that we talked about this before, but this is now what we're going to call a setup bearing. So we've honed the inside of this bearing. That way it literally slips on and off this pinion gear. And that's not what you want. You want this to be a press fit. However, it's a huge pain to press this on and off without damaging this bearing when we're just doing a mock-up situation right now. So I highly recommend modifying a bearing like this. Just spend the 20 bucks, get an extra bearing, hone the inside of it. This will be way easier to do these rear ends. Plus, if you're going to do more than one, you can save this and use it over and over. So we have about 29 thousandths of shims here. You know, not about, it is 29. So, you know, with a dowel caliper, it's not, you know, as accurate as it could be. But we're gonna put this on here. We're gonna put this all back together, put the pinion depth tool in there, and we're gonna see if we hit our target measurement of 1.083 inches. See if we can get a measurement. And if you recall before, we were going for 1.083, and what we're dealing with right now is about 1.0835. See how that's right in between 8.3 and 8.4? And I know the numbers don't add up, but refer back to the article about how to use this gauge and you'll understand what that means. So we're within 0.5 thousandths of our target measurement right now.
That sounds pretty okay.
I'm gonna call that a victory. I've set up, you know, lots and lots of rear ends. You're never going to be absolutely perfect, but to be within 0.5 thou, I like that.
Okay.
Take that. All right.
So what's the next step?
To assemble the pinion gear for good, put the crush sleeve in, get the right preload on it.
You gotta press the bearing on with the shims under it.
Yep, press the bearing on for good. Put the crush sleeve in, put the seal in, compress the crush sleeve until we get the target preload on the pinion bearings. All right, so when I'm taking this apart, you know, this bearing is sort of a press fit. It's not that tight, but it's tighter than I can just pull the gear out of here. So when I hit this with a hammer, I'm not gonna let it come back. I'm gonna hit it and I'm gonna hold it. See that? That bearing's not gonna fall out then.
And
I didn't drop it on the ground and mess up the bearing. So when you do a few rear ends, what you end up with is random bags like this of stuff for certain rear ends. These are the inner bearing, you know, of side bearings and pinion bearings. Imagine this bearing with the outer cage cut off and all the rollers gone. That's really what this is. But I like to save these because they make great pressing tools. And then here's some bearing shims that are out of another rebuild kit. I just throw all this stuff in bags like this and then label it for whatever it's for, you know, and pretty soon you end up with a whole toolbox drawer full of these things. And like this setup bearing, you know, I'll throw this in there and then this will be ready to go the next time we want to do another 12 bolt.
Because we machined that inner surface off.
Yes, we honed the inside of this bearing so that it would slip on and off. Now this is the actual bearing that we're going to end up using. We've got our 29 thousandths shim stack here, which actually ended up just being 2 shims in this case. Measures 29 thou, and we were within 0.5 thou on our pinion depth. So this is going to be a press fit when we go on. You can see that it doesn't slide on. I have tape on this now because I wanted to label what it is, but it would go on and off perfectly. So now we're going to go over to the press and we're going to push this bearing down and then we're going to put it the rest of the way together.
Okay, so we went and found this random piece of exhaust tailpipe, 2-inch inside diameter. We just cut it down to length and cleaned up the edges, squared them up. It actually is going to work perfect for that bearing. So this might be easier for you guys to find than something else to press that on with. Put a little goopus on there.
Go to the press.
Head over to the press. All right guys, we're over here at the press. We got our exhaust tubing on here and we're just gonna slowly start getting this thing started. We want to make sure the bearing spins freely so that we're not in a bind. And then once we get this thing started on here, we're gonna let a little tension off and we're gonna recenter everything just so we make sure it's pushing on straight. All right, that's fully pressed down on there.
All right, so we have our new bearings on here. This is pressed on. We have the correct shim underneath. We know that our pinion depth is going to be right. So now I have the crush sleeve put on here. And here's the front pinion bearing. We're going to put all this stuff together. And we are also going to put our seal in now and put our yoke on and then actually torque this down and compress that crush sleeve to get the proper amount of pinion bearing preload that we want.
Isn't that a companion flange?
Companion flange, yoke, what do you want me to do? People call it either one. Okay. All right, so we're gonna put the pinion seal in now, which means we have to put this front pinion bearing in first, but what I like to do is put some silicone around this. Obviously, this is a place that can leak. You don't have to put silicone on here. I like to do it.
A little extra insurance.
It is. I like to have a little bit of that on there. And what you want to do is get it like all over your hands and make as big of a mess as you possibly can. And then touch like nice stuff that you don't want silicone on.
Throw your bucket of washers on the floor.
That too.
Okay, have you made enough of a mess?
Not yet.
Your tools, doctor.
Scalpel.
Claw hammer.
Might as well be a scalpel. There it is. Okay, another thing that I like to do, obviously this seal is dry right now. When we put this companion flange or yoke, whatever you want to call it, I just like to put a little bit of assembly lube on this so that when this goes in here, it's not running dry on the seal. Another thing that is kind of a little trick, I guess, amongst professional people that build rear ends and stuff, put some RTV or some silicone sealant or anaerobic gel, whatever you want to use, on the splines of the companion flange. That way oil doesn't leak out, over time.
Because there's no seal right there.
There's no seal.
It's basically just the machine surfaces fitting together to seal it.
Right, and you don't need a lot, but
just coat each spline or valley.
Yep, I just like to make sure there's a little bit in there. I actually need a little bit more, I think.
He's a caulk master, folks.
Okay, so our bearing's already in here. We have our seal pushed in. Here's the pinion gear. The shim's in there. The bearing's pressed on. Here's our crush sleeve. So we're ready to put this together. And here's our yoke. I have a little bit of assembly lube on the part that runs on the seal. I have some silicone sealer on the splines. That way oil can't leak out. And then we've got our washers and nut that go on. And actually I want to put a little bit of Loctite on this nut. We're going to put this together one time and get the preload correct. So I need a socket and a 1/2" ratchet, please.
Need an extension?
No, I don't think so. Well, maybe. So then we have this holding tool that we put on here. Give me that. Kind of hard to do this. I know this is not tight enough yet. I'm gonna hold it. We might need a breaker bar. You got a 1/2" breaker bar?
I got something even bigger.
Oh my God. We could really do some damage with this sucker.
Yeah, we can fucking torque that thing to the moon.
You can move anything if you have a long enough lever. Okay, so I have a little preload on it. I'm gonna take this apart and check the preload now.
Pull the handle off.
Yep. This is just a little inch-pound torque wrench, and we have a couple adapters going down to our 1 1/8" socket, and we want 14 to 18 inch-pounds of preload on this.
So that's that free spin with no gears or anything in there.
Yeah, just the pinion only installed, and it feels pretty good actually. We'll see what it's at.
Damn, you almost nailed that shit.
Could be a little bit more.
Maybe about 12.
Well, I mean, 14 to 18, 14 to 19.
But yeah, but that was just at about what, 12?
Yeah, it was. Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. A little bit more.
That's all. I need to lower it if I can. I can get more speed on it if we can bring it down here so I can pull up on it.
Okay. Let's try this.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension there trying to compress that crush washer.
Yep. But this is where you have to be careful, because if you go too much in one shot,
You can't, there's no one doing
there's
it.
no going back. So it feels pretty good right now. That's pretty much right at 14 inch-pounds, and I know it's hard to see that on the camera here. You know, it's rotating too at the same time, so it's about 14, 15. So I think that's good. Okay, so we set this rear end up once, and we used this crush sleeve that comes with the ring and pinion rebuild kit. And that's fine, they work good. You know, that's what they had from the factory. But Mike is gonna probably thrash on this car a little bit more than the next car might get. And especially the place that these tend to fail sometimes is on engine braking. When you have a load, you know, coming from the opposite direction, I guess, it wants to compress the crush sleeve a little bit. It pulls the pinion toward the engine. So these are inherently, you know, a problem for that reason. So what we did, we got this solid pinion spacer, which I'm a big fan of these. This kind of comes from the circle track racing world. That's where I first learned about them. But it's a solid spacer and it won't compress, but then you get a variety of different shims. So what we did, we measured our pinion spacer. The solid spacer was 2 inches, 246 thousandths. And then we measured our original style crush sleeve, it was 2 inches 339 thousandths. So that was a 93 thousandths difference. So we stacked these shims up a little bit thicker than 93 thousandths. And the instructions for this say that you're supposed to put it in and, you know, start with that measurement or close to that, put it in, and then tighten the pinion nut to 125 foot-pounds, measure your pinion bearing preload, which we did, and it was a little bit too loose. So we removed a couple thousandths of shims, and I think right now we're around 90 or so. But our pinion bearing preload is, I think it was like 17 foot-pound or inch-pounds. What was it, Mike? 16 inch-pounds, whatever it was. That's within the spec. So the spec is 14 to 19 on pinion bearing preload. And when we put this together for the last time, I'll demonstrate pinion bearing preload one more time so you can see it. But this is the thing, it's really simple. Honestly, this is probably easier to set up than this was, but we wanted to show you both ways. So there you have it.
Yeah, this one just comes stock with the kit, so we just wanted to show you how to put that in and how to set it up.
Right.
Even though we knew we were going to go with that one.
For performance applications, I think this is the way to go every time. I mean,
agree.
What was this, 20, 30 bucks? It's not expensive.
I don't know, I got the receipt right here. Nope. 20 pinion bearing spacer, $29.
Yeah, I recommend using these. Anything that has, you know, a decent amount of performance, or you're going to beat on it a little bit, or road race or whatever, I think this is a much better way to go.
Probably with the stick shift apparently, or also just because you're downshifting.
Yes, exactly. So we have that all ready to go. We're going to put it together for the last time now. There's a brand new pinion nut because we took the other pinion nut on and off a couple times, so we picked up another brand new one.
This kind of has some tanks in it, so it's almost like it's got built-in Loctite, but
right. Yeah. But we're putting a little bit on there anyway, because hopefully we never take this back apart.
Okay.
You know, stuff breaks, I get it, but this is going in the car before we take it back apart, at least I can tell you that for sure.
Make sure you put the USA side out. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, 14 to 19 is our spec. And you got to do it while it's rotating. Kind of hard to see that probably. But it's right about 15.
Yeah, it's pretty much anywhere between 15 and 17.
Right. So that's in there. That's done.
Check.
Okay, so these are the shims that come with the bearing rebuild kit, whatever it is. And they're different than the stock ones. You know, they have that little lip there and then two sides so you can add or remove shims from the middle, you know, to make it thicker or thinner, whatever you need it to do. And these go in here, you know, behind this bearing race pretty much. And what that does is shift the differential case that way or this way, depending on if you remove or add shims. And then the other thing that they do is they set the differential case preload, because just like that pinion gear, we were fooling around with preload on that a little bit ago. There's also supposed to be preload on these bearings. So we're just going to put this together with what it is randomly right now and see where we're at, because we don't have old ones to use as a reference. A lot of times if you're just rebuilding an existing rear end, you can just use the old shims or at least measure them and have a baseline, but we don't have that because this was just a housing when we got it. There was no guts or anything in it. So that's what we're going to do, is just put it together. So I'm just going to put a little bit of, maybe I'm going to wipe these off first, I guess. Just put a little bit of oil on this and just roughly put this, or loosely put this together to start with. pretty nice. I just noticed a huge chunk of shit on this bearing. Oh well, it's not mine.
Amen, brother.
Where's the little hammer at?
What kind? What flavor?
I don't know.
You gotta hold it up. Like this big orange one.
I'm just gonna put this on here for a second to keep it from falling out.
Too many shims?
Yeah, I feel like maybe it is. Now I can tell you that's not enough shims, so we need to get that back out of there. So,
What are you after?
I think I saw a little hook pick in here somewhere. Where did I see that at? Yeah. Let's try this. That might be fairly close.
So is this where we put the mustard on here?
Nope, we're gonna just check backlash only right now. So we're gonna set a dial indicator up on here pretty much and move this back and forth like this and see how much backlash, this is backlash. You know,
Just
how
a
much the
little bit.
gear can move without the pinion moving. The mustard.
It's mustard.
No, it ain't.
I don't have to slam it, it's got soft close.
I don't, it's not mine, I don't care about it.
Oh, that's rude.
I know.
So you gotta torque those in order to get, or just get them snug.
Oh yeah, everything has to be torqued. Or it should be. That's the right way to do it. What kind of sockets do you have?
Once you get the right size.
So what is that, going from 39 to 33? 33, 39. I don't know, it's moving all over the place, but 41, 47.
About 6.
What is our target?
6 to 10.
Holy shit.
First try.
First try. That never happens.
That doesn't
That's
happen.
never happened
Did you
before.
cheat? Did we do this before? This is the only thing on the rear end we haven't pre-tested.
Correct. That's, yeah. I'm gonna give it a minute and then check it again and make sure that's right.
Yeah, it's probably gonna wear in a little bit just sitting here.
You know, and it is worth saying something else. Really, you want to be down here on this tooth because this is the one that's moving the most. If you think about it, this one's up here, you know.
It's moving inward and this one's going straight up.
But this little dial indicator, I can't really get down here on that tooth. That's why a bigger one, which I don't have one here right now, one of those larger magnetic base ones that comes out further, or maybe to have something with a longer anvil on it would be better. But you know,
we're on the tight side on the way up.
But you want to be on the tight side because this is a new ring and pinion and it's going to wear in. You know, just like the pinion bearing preload, you want that to be a little snug because it's going to wear in and it's going to get looser as you drive it. So I think this is really good. I'm happy with this.
Me too. All right, so we moved the dial indicator to a better location in order to get a more accurate reading from the 90-degree mark, and we came up with about 8.5, 9 thou. 8.5, 9.
But now we're going to put the mustard on it, as Mike calls it, which is the gear marking compound.
I'm excited for this part.
Where'd that go? Is it in this box?
It's probably in a black box.
I think it's in this box. There it is. I remember this one time I was at Disney World with my parents. I was like 9 or 10 years old probably. And I was already getting in some trouble. You know, that's how it always goes. And there was a pack of mustard on the ground just sitting there on the sidewalk. And I decided it'd be a good idea to stomp the pack of mustard. So then it shot and it hit my sister. And then I remember my dad was pissed and he was yelling, "All right, that's it. We're going home right now." And I was kind of a smart ass kid. So I remember saying, "Well, yeah, but we don't have flights until Friday," or whatever day it was. It was like a couple days away. And he was so mad because he knew I was right. And there was nothing he could do to punish me really at the time. You can't beat your kids at Disney World because somebody's gonna see you doing it. Anyway, that's what I think about when I see mustard. All right. So, let me get this gooped up on here. And I'm just gonna do this on a couple teeth, and then I'm gonna skip a few. And I want the heel and the toe, which is a technical term, I guess, on the teeth. Pretty much means the front and the back of the teeth.
You want to coat the whole V.
But you don't need to do every tooth on the whole ring gear, because you know they're going to be pretty similar when they're right next to each other. And they didn't give us enough mustard to do that. So I usually do like 3 teeth. And you kind of want enough on there that there's a little bit of, you know, thickness so that you can get an imprint. So I'm gonna do 2 spots. I'm gonna kind of go like 180 degrees, because if you think about it, if the ring gear's out around somehow, the contact pattern will be different from one side to another. And another thing that you can do if you want to see how out around something might be, you can put a dial indicator on here, set it up with a nice magnetic base, one nicer than what we're dealing with tonight, and just spin it slowly and check the run out. And I think like, you know, 2 thou or so is about maximum run out that you'd want to deal with. Maybe more, I don't know. Okay. Do one more. Okay, so now here's another important part of this. I need a wrench. When you turn this over, I want a load on the ring gear. You know, I don't want to just turn this real effortlessly, because those teeth are not going to push against each other like they will when they're in the car going down the road. So I'm going to use this wrench and just kind of keep some pressure on this when I turn this. So, you know, right now I could turn this real easy, turning this companion flange on the front. But if I have a wrench here and I pull up right now as I'm turning this, I'm gonna get, you know, a little bit better contact. It's going to be a little bit more accurate, I guess, than if there's no load on it. So then I'm gonna go the other way too, and I'm gonna push down. I went a little too far, I guess, because I want the other side of the gear to leave a contact pattern as well.
So on decel, or
yeah, so this would be accelerating right now because the ring gear's going forward. So I did actually coast, is what you call that. Technically, I guess is what you'd call that. Okay. So now I'm going to do the other. And you can see it kind of gets spread around because some of that gear marking compound will end up on the pinion gear, and then once it comes around, you know, it'll leave a mark. So this side of the gear is the side that gets pushed on when you're going forward. I don't remember, I think it's called the toe, if I remember right. You can look up gear marking charts and see all of that. Let me find a pointer here. So you can see how this starts kind of low and the contact pattern comes up. The more load it's under, the taller that clean mark is going to be, because as the teeth load, it kind of spreads the load up, you know, the tooth of that gear. So that looks really good. It's in the middle. It's not way out here. You know, you can see kind of a hard line where it stops, and it's pretty even in the middle of the tooth. And then you kind of want to look and see what the rest of them look like. And so far what I'm seeing is they're all pretty similar, you know. And see, they're a little different as far as height goes, because I was probably putting a little bit different amount of pressure. This one to me looks taller than that one. But it looks good. And then if we start looking at the other side of the gear, it looks very similar. You know, actually you'd probably want to see maybe a little bit higher would be okay. These look pretty good. I kind of like the way those look. I mean, it's pretty centered. And there's a whole, you can go on a deep dive on the internet if you want to see a whole bunch of different contact patterns and stuff like that. But I like this. I think it's good. And this is the first time we've done this. We didn't do a fake test run or anything. And I cannot speak highly enough of measuring the pinion depth with that tool that we showed. You know, what was it's written in here, I guess I can look in there. The pinion gear had a measurement on it. It was like 2.4, I don't know what it was. But anyway, you can, obviously in the video it'll be there. Actually, whatever, I thought it might have been written right there. Actually, it's 1.083. There it is right there. 1.083. And we hit that number on the money. And then it also says 10 thousandths backlash right there. You know, factory specs is 6 to 10, right?
6 to 10, yeah.
6 to 10. That's what they set it up at. So when these gears are lapped in at the factory, that's the pinion depth and that's the backlash. And what do we have? 9 thousandths backlash, and we hit the pinion depth on the money. And look at the contact pattern we have. Super simple. You know, before I had those tools for doing this the correct way, I would just put shims in there and I'd have to put the whole thing together, run a contact pattern, and go, oh, looks like I need to move it out or move it in or whatever. This is one and done, you know, so that tool saves a ton of time. I can imagine how long it would take to do one of these without that. But anyway, this looks really good. So now we're gonna pull these bolts out and put Loctite on them and torque them down, and we're done. We're ready to put the axles and the cover on.
Okay, now that we're happy with the way everything looks, we're ready to put some Loctite on the carrier cap bolts and torque them down to 60 foot-pounds. All right, so we've got our C-clip eliminator kit, and we're just doing a quick mock-up on it just to make sure that the axle isn't coming in contact with that center pin. I don't know if you can see it or not.
You might be able to see it better from the other side. Let me go.
There's that pin. We want to make
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
See that?
So you can see the axle down in there. We just want to make sure we have clearance between that. We will still have our brake backing flange there, which we'll put that out roughly about that, maybe a little farther. So we should have plenty of room in there, so we don't have to worry about that grinding when we're taking corners, because the inside axle is going to turn slower than the outer axle.
There. You can see that better.
So we got plenty of room. That's one of the things I said to check in the instructions. So we're good on both sides on that. So, all right. So these C-clip eliminator kits have been known to seep oil around the flange. The trick for this is to put some RTV on, I believe, both sides of the flange. And so that's what we're going to do.
Here's a little tech tip for you guys if you haven't ever seen this. Silicone bottles come with a little pokey end there, and that's how you open it. Man, I can smell it. This stuff's potent.
It matches the paint.
Well, we got, yeah, because it's a silver car, we got this specifically for this car.
It actually came with the kit, but I pre-ordered it with silver.
Yeah, because it's a silver car. All right, is that enough or you want more?
No, that's goopest. I don't know. Oh, that is pungent.
Yeah.
You want to just do this one on the bench?
Yeah, give it to me. Let's do it right here.
You know somebody's gonna have a red car and they're gonna try to order red RTV.
Yeah, that's fine. It's not my problem.
All right, I'm gonna have to set the camera down, I think, to do this part.
What is this here?
It's Goopus.
Oh, you better wipe that off. What are you doing?
Just putting the cover on.
Definitely looks good.
It's by far the coolest thing I've ever put on a rear end before.
Oh, you forgot the gasket. Look, it's hanging on the...
Ah, shit. The way this thing's went together, we have backups of everything. Oh, that one hit the mark.
What is it, 25 foot-pounds?
25 foot-pounds. Not a lot.
Well, it's a small bolt. What is it, a 5/16 bolt?
It's fucking quarter-inch Allen, dude. Alright, I'm just gonna go around in the circle so I don't get confused. For how girthy this freaking cover is. Try to torque this into 4,000.
Yeah, and strip the threads right out of the housing.
All right, we'll go around this one more time and then make sure they're all snugged up, and that's gonna be a wrap. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Hit up FTP Speed Shop, go get some merch, help support the channel. We'll catch you on the next one.